Hey, I'm Hammeh and welcome to this video where we're going to be taking a quick look at the Overwatch recall short, doing a little bit of analysis, having a look at things that we've actually just learned from watching this short, and then also having a look at some things that we kind of knew before but are nice to see confirmed. If you haven't seen the Overwatch recall short yet, go over to the Xbox YouTube channel. This video is very heavy in spoilers for the short. You have been warned. If you haven't watched it yet, go and have a look at it. The link is below. But we're going to dive straight on in. I'm going to try and leave some of the cool moments of the short for you, but we're going to go over a few of the things that we've seen. So without further ado, let's jump on in as this scene very slowly transitions, as we hope the next split is going well, into one of our first screenshots. So, as a quick summary, this covers Winston in Watchpoint Gibraltar, an attack on Watchpoint Gibraltar by Reaper and the agents of Talon, an agency, a sort of organisation that we're familiar with, and Winston eventually deciding to do something about the situation that's going on in the world, and also the fact that this has been kind of spurred on by this attack from Talon as well. So the first thing that I think that has kind of been confirmed, or maybe this is just the way that the news define it, as you see in this screenshot of the newscaster, is that this has been defined as the second Omnic crisis. Now that's kind of a big deal in the Overwatch universe. The first Omnic crisis, as via Reinhardt's biography on the Overwatch website and a few other places, is cited in the Overwatch timeline to be around 30 years ago. So this is actually defined as the second Omnic crisis. It also says, if you have a look at the news anchor and what she's saying and talking about, as well as that little ticker down at the bottom there, that it's devastating Russia. 15,000 lives have been lost. That graph actually shows you a bit about where the different lives have been lost, sadly, and where. I believe that Europe is quite the top of that. There's some in the USA. So this is very much a global thing that's going on. Maybe that's why the moniker of Omnic crisis has been attached to it. We will wait and we will see. But certainly that's been said. And it also, in the video, it says that the international community has been reluctant to intervene. This is probably why Winston himself is watching the various sort of streams and news and getting a little concerned. But the interesting things that we found here was that it's actually been defined, perhaps, at least by the news, as another Omnic crisis. The fact that it's in Russia, now this is kind of borne out if you have a look at Zaya's bio. And now Zaya's bio, over on the Overwatch website, Zaya was going to be a weightlifter, going to be a champion weightlifter, I do believe, and bodybuilder. She was training for the World Championships, potentially the Olympics or Overwatch equivalent of that, when in her bio it says that, very sadly, there was an attack coming from the long-dormant Siberian Omnium. Now, it seems as though in the first Omnic crisis, through several of the characters' biographies, that Omniums, we know there was one in Australia because Junkrat and Rogue and the Junkers all sprung up around that. We certainly know that there was one in Russia that's been referred to here. And Zaya was actually withdrawn from the competition, and she's actually, at this point in the timeline, we believe, in Siberia fighting the Omnium. So the news saying that Russia is sort of in a lot of trouble and that an Omnic crisis is devastating Russia again kind of ties up with Zaya's bio, that she's kind of had to withdraw from her athletics competition to go and check that out. So that's quite interesting. The second Omnic crisis as well, we've got this Omnium in Siberia that's kind of reactivated itself, which is interesting. Now, this is not the only Omnium or sort of Omnic kind of mega Omnic, as it were, to reactivate itself and cause trouble. If you have a look at Diva's bio, now Diva's bio and the whole mecha, the mechanized sort of force of Korea, there is an Omnium that sort of hangs around Korea. It comes out of the sea and assaults South Korea and its neighbours. And then this Omnic kind of learns from the encounters that it has, to the extent where it eventually bypasses the mech forces control, which is why they need human pilots, which is why Diva gets recruited into Mecha and starts fighting in the first place. But that's another example of an Omnic that adapts, goes away and comes back. And then we've seen this Siberian Omnium as well that goes away and comes back. So second Omnic crisis confirmed, potentially, even if it's just a sort of slightly crazy, a little bit over the top news channel way of sort of dimming it. But it's also interesting to see that it's come in Russia, the ties to Zaya, and then also this sort of thing where these larger, sort of more threatening Omnics go away and come back again. So maybe the first thing we've confirmed is that we are officially in the second Omnic crisis. Another interesting thing I just spotted, it's kind of tough to see here, but I can just read it out, is this ticker at the bottom of the screen. underneath the news. And it has a few things. Numerico opens its first of the new power plants in Dorado, Mexico. Well, we know that because the Dorado map in Mexico is themed around this big sort of pyramid power plant that seems to be somehow drawing energy from the earth. And the other interesting one is Numbani postpones annual Unity Festival due to Anonymous. Due to an anonymous what? Absolutely no idea. But I just found that quite interesting as well. What anonymous person, thing, threat is causing problems in Numbani? Obviously, when you play Numbani in the beta at the moment, and as the map, you can see that it's kind of a little bit sort of deserted. There's something going on there, something a bit weird. So who knows what's going on in Numbani? Just interesting to see the little news ticker at the bottom there. So that was number one thing that we thought we kind of gleaned. Perhaps we're in the midst of a second Omnic crisis. Maybe Zaya is fighting it over in Russia, the Siberian Omnium. But there are, of course, Omniums, huge Omnics that are active in the other parts of the world. Certainly we know of one in Korea that Diva is probably active fighting at this moment in time. We'll see. Now, the next thing that was kind of interesting from the short was Athena. Now, there's some cool bits with Athena, some cool back and forth. I won't go into all the details, but Athena very much showed in the short that she's more than just a functional AI. It's been sort of speculated, I indeed, in a sort of top 5 heroes video that I did, link in the description below, speculated, as well as many people in the community, that Athena is Overwatch's AI. She's referred to, she introduces herself in the Overwatch tutorial. You've seen references to her in Watchpoint Gibraltar map for quite some time. However, the kind of interesting sort of thing on top of that is that she has a lot of back and forth with Winston. We know that she monitors his vitals. She decides to tell Winston how long it was since he had his last workout, and throws a few quotes at him. And when Winston is actually sort of struggling with dealing with this news of this Omnic outbreak in Russia and the way that the Russian people are trying to deal with it, she sort of kind of warns him against getting involved almost. She's got a very much of a conscience that she shows through there without going through all of the lines. So Athena is more than just a functional AI. That was number 2 thing that was really interesting. Have a look at the short. Really recommend it. See what you think. I'll stick the link to the short as well below. And in terms of Omnics and, sort of machines, AIs and similar, robots kind of rising, this sort of trend in the Overwatch universe. We see Zenyatta as well, robots, AIs developing senses of self and form. Athena very much feels in that form to me. I don't know about you guys. She has this real, assuming it's a she, has this kind of real sort of sense of, almost sort of looking after Winston, very sort of something beyond sort of someone turning on the lights, regulating the temperatures, keeping the servers okay, commanding the Overwatch satellite in space and all that kind of thing. So Athena feels like a little bit more than just a functional AI to us. And the thing that Athena was reminding Winston of, this was quite interesting. Now, there's a couple of references to this. Right at the beginning of the trailer, you see sort of the Petras act sort of stuck in a poster over the sort of presumably dead gates of Watchpoint Gibraltar. It's again flashed up, and Athena very, very quickly reminds Winston that any Overwatch activity is illegal and can be threatened with prosecution or something similar in that vein. I cannot remember the precise wording, I'll be honest with you. But also pretty cool. So we now know that obviously Overwatch was disbanded, fell into disgrace, the Petras Act, and obviously the International Justice Commission, Global Security, the IJC. Petras sounds like a person. You often have acts named after people, so it'll be interesting to find out who Petras is and, why they had so much against Overwatch. That certainly sounds like something that will be quite interesting to take a peek at. Big welcome to everyone who's joining us on stream. It's a short release today. You can see it on the Xbox YouTube channel. I'll keep on going. But if you haven't seen the short, if you're watching and you haven't seen the short, please do go and watch the short. You should go away. You should leave this and come back afterwards because there are big spoilers. So the Petras Act, we know why Overwatch has been shut down and who was responsible. And it's actually illegal to try and take any Overwatch action. So a little bit of a background on a bit of Overwatch, and sort of Winston sort of then says, well, that's the way the world is nowadays, but he sure misses the old days. And you can tell here that a little bit of a fail on taking screenshots. So a big apology to all of those people screaming at the Windows Media Player taskbar in the bottom there. But the old days of Overwatch. Now, what's really nice about this reference in the short is that we've seen this in game. A lot of people pick this up on Reddit and similar places. This is a photo that's not only on Winston's terminals in Watchpoint Gibraltar, but it is also in the Overwatch dropships. You can see these in the dropship that drops you on Ilios, and then also, let's not forget Nepal, and then last but not least, Lijiang Tower, which is very, very cool. But it was very low res, so it was low res for a reason. We can now see why. Well, we have Reyes on the left there, Reyes who becomes a Reaper. If you're up on your hero lore, I'm not 100% on that. Many, many fine channels. Go check out Low Mana Gamers, amongst others, for really in-depth hero lore. We can see Morrison there, Morrison who becomes Soldier 76. Torbjorn, of course, Mercy, Tracer jumping up in the air there, Winston graduating. I've not had a full look at his certificate, but he's clearly celebrating becoming a member of Overwatch, potentially, I think, in this photo. Got Reinhardt there, still looking quite old. We have Genji, I believe, McCree, and then this is, I believe, Anna Amori. This is Farah's mother, so Farah Amori is in the Raptora suit, firing all of the rockets. So Anna Amaro is Farah's mother, member of the original Overwatch. We've seen her in several of the original trailers, as well as the Soldier 76 origin story. So Anna Amori is an interesting one. We've speculated about her in other videos, but we don't know her whereabouts or kind of what's happened to her at this moment in time. Maybe she becomes a hero, maybe she doesn't. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, the old days of Overwatch. We can certainly see some of the original Overwatch lineup here. The other interesting thing that I kind of just thought about is you've got 10 people there in total. At some point, Overwatch was 8 people in Watchpoint Gibraltar, because I believe there are only 8 chairs in around the Overwatch sort of table at the bottom, but who knows if that directly corresponds to the amount of people in Overwatch or not. But anyway, the old days of Overwatch. We get some more nice bits about the old days of Overwatch. Again, these photos, we saw this in pretty good res, at least these two, if not the final Winston one as well, but both of these are also on Winston's terminal in Watchpoint Gibraltar, and they are also in the dropships as well. So this short has kind of been quite heavily teased, and in fact there are some level references in the map of Watchpoint Gibraltar that we'll have a look at the very end, which is a very nice way just to wrap everything up, I think. Very, very cool. So, as well as sort of seeing a bit more of the backstory, we've seen teases. Harold Winston, Dr. Harold Winston, is mentioned, and we've seen him at BlizzCon in the sort of Exploring Overwatch and Backworld panel. In this trailer, I'm not going to show some of the key Winston moments, because it's a really nice scene. You should totally go and watch it yourself if you haven't already. But for those of you who have seen it, there's some cool stuff we kind of have confirmed about Winston that we've been able to speculate, but it's nice to see it sort of kind of confirmed anyway. Winston's love of peanut butter, which is very, very cool. We can see him trading it for Dr. Winston's glasses here. If you have a look in the actual video, in the background, you can see, I believe it's Warcraft, as well as a really crazy, it's bigger than a Rubik's Cube. It's like kind of a pentacube or something absolutely crazy, but it's like a Rubik's Cube style toy on the table. I think it's Warcraft, unlike his Etch-a-Sketch style thing in the background, which is very, very cool. But we learn about, Winston's love of peanut butter, which is pretty cool. You see Harold Winston and the references to the Horizon lunar colony, which we'll talk about in a bit. Obviously, Winston was one of a bunch of apes on the moon, as we know about from his bio. And he was sort of pretty clever. He was having pretty rapid brain development from his gene therapy, and then Harold Winston takes him under his wing and kind of inspires him a whole bunch. Sadly, the entire Horizon experiment on the moon goes a little bit south. But we also see Winston getting Dr. Harold Winston's glasses and getting very inspired by them as well as loving a bit more peanut butter there. I need to have a look at these lexicograms in terms of this is probably how Winston is being taught in many different ways. There's some really, really cool bits. Some of these screenshots, for those of you who have seen the short, are a little bit out of sequence. But nice background on Winston. Of course, after this, we have to remember that there's a little bit of a revolt, according to Winston's bio in the moon. Some of the guerrillas get a little bit testy, shall we say. They actually, very, very sadly, kill the mission scientists, claim the colony for their own, and then Winston kind of makes his own rocket and flies to Earth. So a little bit of a tough end to that story there. Happily, we don't see what happens to poor Dr. Harold Winston and the rest of the people on the Horizon lunar colony. But that's where Winston comes from. Winston has a real wow moment at the end of it, which is very awesome. But I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, you know exactly what I mean. Really, really cool stuff. So there we go. So far, we have talked about this economic crisis. We have had a little bit of a ponder as to why Overwatch isn't active anymore, and we've gone into a bit more about the old days of Overwatch and Winston's backstory. Next, we're actually going to have a quick look at Reaper. Now, we have a little bit of a look at Reaper here. We learn a couple of things about Reaper. Reaper is working with Talon. Talon agents have invaded Watchpoint Gibraltar, because Winston turns around and says Talon. So there we go. Now, given that Reaper and Widowmaker were working together in the very first Overwatch cinematic when Overwatch was announced back in BlizzCon a couple of years ago, it was fairly safe to say, better speculators than I on hero lore have sort of said that Reaper's working with Talon. So this kind of confirms it. You know, there's no Widowmaker in sight. Reaper shows up with some Talon agents. But the interesting thing about this is that it kind of takes us a little bit into the backstories of Reaper and Widowmaker. Now, from Widowmaker's history, we know that she kind of got brainwashed. They were going... Talon were actually a bunch of terrorists. They're a terrorist organisation. So a no good bunch of dudes and dudettes for sure. They were going after an Overwatch agent called Gerard Lacroix, and Amélie Lacroix, or whoever Widowmaker is now, was Gerard's other half. So they grabbed Amélie, brainwashed her, she killed Gerard, and then Talon took her and gave her extensive training and then altered her physiology, drastically slowing her heart, which turned her skin cold and blue and numbed her ability to experience human emotion. But because her heart is so slow, she's got that very, very, calm demeanour, which obviously makes her the great sniper that she is. So we know that Widowmaker has been, let's say, experimented on, physiologically altered, certainly sounds like experimented on. And Widowmaker has had that done to her by Talon. Reaper, we now know, is working with Talon. We also know from Reaper's backstory that Reaper was thought dead, as well as Jack Morrison. So Reyes and Morrison were thought dead in a big fight at Overwatch's HQ. So we now know that Morrison became Soldier 76 from his origin story, and Reyes became Reaper. So how did Reyes become Reaper? It's possible, apparently, according to his bio, he's the byproduct of a failed genetic alteration which forces his cells to simultaneously decay and regenerate at a hyper-accelerated rate. Talon have experimented or changed Widowmaker. Have Talon experimented or changed Reaper? And how has it all gone wrong? Well, how has Talon as a terrorist organisation got this crazy technology in the first place? There's a lot of different corporations in the Overwatch universe, so I reckon Talon maybe could have some links with one of the corporations we see in the maps, because this is kind of serious technology. If you're able to physiologically alter people, genetically, even accidentally create something like Reaper, you've got to have a few bucks behind you and some fair scientific smarts. So it'd be interesting to see how Reaper is tied to Talon and how Reaper's whole backstory came together with Talon as well, which is pretty interesting as well. Reaper is, as we've seen, in the short, collecting information of all Overwatch agents and their locations. Now, along with his bio on the website, this kind of ties in with us knowing that Reaper is killing and targeting Overwatch agents. So, raiding Watchpoint Gibraltar, trying to get information on the Overwatch agents makes perfect sense. I actually liked this little frame. I believe on the probe that Reaper actually puts into the computers to start sort of hacking it, it says lamprey. And I believe that lampreys are a form of eel. He says, very rapidly Googling. Sort of a little lamprey eel. Yep, and they've got a toothless funnel sucking them out, and they sort of stick onto things. I remember these. So there you go. It's like, it's named lamprey, and it's, lamprey eels in real life sort of stick onto stuff with kind of jaws. So a nice little reference there to a nice little sticky probe that sticks onto something as well. But we know that Reaper is hunting agents. Makes perfect sense for him to be here. So the last couple of things that were quite interesting from this short that I'll pick out. We saw this frame towards the end where it shows when, long story short, Winston has kind of saved the day of it and decided to, spoiler alert, reactivate Overwatch or reactivate Overwatch agents, where different people are in the world. So it looks as though McCree is somewhere in the US, makes perfect sense. on his bio, he's stated as, I think, being active in Santa Fe. I have a nice little theory on that for the McCree comic that's going to be coming out very soon, so keep an eye on the YouTube channel for that in the future. Genji is also in the S, can't see precisely where. Reinhardt looks like he's in Greenland, as some very astute Redditors have spotted. Tracer being in the UK is no massive surprise. Torbjorn's kind of hanging somewhere up, maybe he's helping out in Russia or somewhere sort of vaguely in the CIS kind of region, and Mercy's chilling out in the Middle East, which is quite interesting. It actually looks as though that she's maybe somewhere, I don't know, somewhere sort of in Saudi Arabia, I mean, a little bit sort of towards the Persian Gulf kind of style of things. So a little bit of an idea as to where Overwatch Agents are actually right now. That was quite a nice little screen. And then, well, when Winston was reactivating Overwatch or trying to get in touch with them, it went through a whole list of characters. There was 15 in total. I will flick through these very quickly. This could be a video in itself. I've done hero speculation in top 5 heroes video, which you should totally take a look at. But sell out Sam there. But I'll quickly spend a little bit more time on a couple of heroes that I think are worth taking a look at. This guy I think is Soundquake. I've dubbed him Soundquake, but whether he's Soundquake or not, there's probably references to him if you look sort of laterally in a couple of maps, and he's certainly in the original concept art from the original trailer. So this guy, kind of know. An interesting kind of robot, this one. I'm not sure if he's referred to in the art or it's referred to in the art. I'll have to check. Could be an Omnic, who knows. But sort of a very unique design. And you'll see what I mean by unique design, that some of these people, not saying they have to have augmentations to have a story, as someone put it on Reddit, but some of these people have sort of very interesting helmets and sort of glasses and things like that. So very interesting visor here in terms of speculation. He's got certainly a very sort of, defined look about him. Another candidate maybe for Soundquake, which is kind of an interesting call here in terms of another sort of robot or Omnic, so very defined look to that character. Ditto for this character, really, really interesting sort of, eyepiece and kind of semi-augmentations and things here. It's too tempting to sort of call some of these people generic, but they've all got sort of blue armor, blue shoulder pads here, sort of a few different things going on. So these could be, you see a lot of soldiers in the background of various Overwatch art with sort of the blue shoulders and things. So there will be sort of, maybe this is the infantry uniform, and maybe these are the kind of, let's not forget, in terms of Morrison and Reyes, many people working with and fighting for Overwatch were sort of kind of infantry style class. So by no means, although I sort of say, they've got a generic look, if you have a look at Reyes, if you have a look at, Morrison, you could probably describe them as semi-generic if they're presented in this kind of way as well. So these people, I'm sure, have very interesting stories to tell, whoever they may be. Interesting, I just find the camo paint also interesting there. Again, kind of got this sort of infantry set, a little bit of a beret there. Very interesting. Kind of looks to me like a sort of a strange version of Widowmaker's sniping gear, that one. So I like this guy's sort of head outfit. Very, very cool. Big welcome if you're joining us on stream, by the way. We will have to see. Again, it's kind of like a semi-Lucio style visor, but an interesting looking chap there. And yep, a very striking hairstyle. What can I say? I almost thought this might have been a Raptora, like Farah's outfit, in terms of the armor. But maybe I'm just sort of making a huge big jump there. I'd have to have a look at the neck piece of Farah's armor on that one. And now this guy is interesting. There's a guy who like this, who on the original Overwatch concept art, and also I believe when there was a survey for Overwatch, potentially after BlizzCon, like it was a survey screen, but also I think if you have a look in the concept art from BlizzCon 2014, also maybe on the very left-hand side of the original cinematic trailer, when they're showing like the full hero lineup, or the full background hero lineup, in a couple of different senses. You can see this guy because of his very sort of obvious sort of, I'm going to call it a Bane-style jaw augmentation. But yeah, again, we think we've seen this guy too. So that was the final quite interesting thing. That is a lot of agents. Now, let's be realistic here. You're probably not going to see all of those as playable characters in the game. 2 or 3 of them seem to have been in the art, like Soundquake, or the guy I like to call Soundquake, whether he is or not, is quite an interesting one. So some of those maybe we'll see as heroes who are playable, but let's not forget that we have more animated shorts, we have a graphic novel, we have lots of digital comics and all kinds of cool stuff. So there's totally an extended Overwatch universe to coin that extended universe term from somewhere a little bit different, that all of these guys could come into, which would be very, very cool. Okay, so that is pretty much our roundup. There's a last couple of things to show off. We have seen loads of cool things. We've kind of had a look at and speculated about the second Omnic crisis, tied that a bit into Zarya and Diva's stories. We've wondered why Nambani's Unity Day was postponed due to an anonymous stranger, I'm going to go for, or similar. Had a bit of a chat about Athena. She's more than a functional AI, kind of reinforces the fact that she might be Omnic or become Omnic in some way or another. Talked about the Petras Act and why Overwatch was made no longer. Had a look at sort of old Overwatch and all that entailed. A bit about Winston's backstory with Harold Winston, the moon and various goings on there, Reaper, Widowmaker and how they're related with Talon, and then last but not least the whole bunch of agents. The final thing that I'd like to do is just have a little jump into game. Now this is Watchpoint Gibraltar, so if you've watched the short, and I'm going to have to, apologise for my potato-like FPS. My laptop here is getting very, very hot. This is not showing off Overwatch to its beautiful finest glory. But this is Watchpoint Gibraltar, where the little short that we just have been going through was set. So you can see the area where Winston was playing with his shield. If we go up here, we can show some map references. Now I want to show you some things that actually changed in the map. So this hole in the map that Winston uses and jumps through and similar, and that is caused by the various goings on, that was put in a very, very recent patch in the beta, so that's not always been there, that hole. So that's very much a sort of reference towards the little short coming through. If we go over to the desk, this is where Winston was sitting. From a lot of the short you can see Athena. Now this originally said, Winston, this is Athena, are you there, or something. There was a terminal here and elsewhere in the level that changed to Athena, so you can see that's a direct reference to the short. Winston throwing his peanut butter lids around. He rolls a peanut butter lid and it very, very conspicuously hits this pile. So as soon as I saw that pile, I was like, that's a really nice reference. It's almost a precise matchup. I believe that in the short, you kind of see it from this angle here. You like roll something over, the tire that Winston's sitting in. Ooh, okay, give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to get that back for you. What happens when you time out the server closing due to an unexpected error? It's a beta fix. These things are going to happen. I've also left it still for a very long period of time, so my apologies on that. Okay, and hopefully we can get back in now. Is this going to work? I hope so. Working as intended. Okay, back in we come. So, where was I? We're going to take a little trip back up to Winston's little research point. So, we've talked about the hole, we've talked about peanut butter lids. If we just swing around here, we've talked about Athena's terminal. And if you swing around here, can you see those photos up there? If I just zoom in a little bit further, you can see in precisely the same order, Mercy Torbjorn, Tracer and Winston, and Dr. Harold Winston there as well. This is the terminal where you see all of the heroes pop up on, and you can actually see them popping up here as well, which is kind of cool. I think this screen's always been like that. If we just pan down a little bit here, we can see some of Winston's signature peanut butter, and that is the photo that we had the much better definition of screenshot for, of Winston's little graduation with all of the original Overwatch members in. Very, very cool. So you can see that even in sort of updating the level and the art within this level just before the short has gone live, real nice attention to detail if you're into that kind of thing. So really appreciate that little Blizzard attention to detail there. Very, very awesome indeed. So that is the end of our roundup kind of analysis of the Overwatch Recall short. What did you think? Thanks if you've joined on the stream. I know it's been very short, but do let us know what you thought of the short in the details below. What do you think about all the different things we discussed? Love to hear your theories. Love to hear you think if I'm barking up the wrong tree, or if some of that sounds kind of cool. Does it make sense? Go have a look at the hero bios as well on the website. A lot of that feels that it kind of ties in. We're going to be doing more Overwatch videos, so if you liked what you saw, why not take a look at the top 5 potential future heroes in Overwatch below, and in the links that you'll see in just a sec, as well as in the description below. You can subscribe if you'd like to see more. Let us know how I can improve this. We'd love to make better videos for you. Thanks very much for tuning in. This has been Falcraft, and I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.